bring you back on. And let's get on to the topic of Davos.
Absolutely, yes. It's the start of the year, so the compromised, corrupt and criminally insane have descended on the World Economic Forum at Davos. Let's hear from Berg Brenda, the World Economic Forum president, about what is going to be going on this week.
That order seems to not be the order anymore. We are on the way to a new order, so we are between orders. Do you agree with that, or are there ways of what are we able to keep on the positive side from the old order to bring into a new world order, and how can we avoid that new world order becomes like a jungle growing back, and we rather have an order based on international law and the principles that have brought us prosperity and freedom for decades?
I guess, and maybe this is the old kind of teacher in me coming out. I think of this a little bit more about a transition of eras rather than a transition of orders, but the two are kind of cousins of one another. The reason I draw the distinction is because I don't think the international order built after 1945 is getting replaced wholesale with some new order. It will obviously evolve as it has evolved multiple times over the decades since 1945. But I do think in a more sharp and distinctive way, we are moving into a new era, and that's what I talked about in my remarks, that we are, the post-Cold War era has come to a close. We're at the start of something new. We have the capacity to shape what that looks like, and at the heart of it will be many of the core principles and core institutions of the existing order, adapted for the challenges that we face today.
So that was Berger Brenda speaking with Jake Sullivan, the US National Security Advisor, a former Director of Policy for President Obama, former Chief of Staff to Hillary Clinton at the State Department, absolutely desperately trying not to talk about the New World Order, which, of course, as we all know, is a vicious, debunked, anti-Semitic, far-right conspiracy theory. I know that because it says so on Wikipedia. This is of unimpeachable provenance, and it absolutely has nothing to do with the end-time emergence of the Antichrist either. So they're up there going into bat for the status quo. So let's hear now from the High Priestess of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen.
Dear Klaus, let me go back to the number one concern of the Global Risk Report: disinformation and misinformation. Tackling this has been our focus since the very beginning of my mandate. With our Digital Services Act, we defined the responsibilities of large internet platforms on the content they promote and propagate. A responsible to children and vulnerable groups targeted by hate speech, but also a responsibility to our societies as a whole. Because the boundary between online and offline is getting thinner and thinner. And the values we cherish offline should also be protected online. And this is even more important in this new era of generative AI. Now, the World Economic Forum Global Risk Report puts artificial intelligence as one of the top potential risks for the next decade.
So disinformation is the top priority. It actually trumps climate change, which apparently is an existential risk to all of us. The tool that they're using to combat disinformation is regulation. It's all about protecting vulnerable groups from hate speech. We've got to quash vicious rumours about things like the New World Order, for example. Also quashing rumours about von der Leyen's refusal to release text messages between herself and Pfizer CEO Anthony Bourla about the purchase of billions of euros of experimental gene therapies, the ones that Andrew Bridgen has just been talking about a moment ago. It's about stopping us from discussing the death from a heart attack of EU investigator Michelle Rabassi, who was looking into those text messages just before Christmas. It's probably about suppressing discussion of her own husband's extremely profitable pharmaceutical business built around mRNA technology. They're going to do it using AI. We didn't ask for artificial intelligence. It's being foisted on us. And actually, she wants to understand where that's coming from. She just needs to look at the audience at the World Economic Forum and all the people taking high-level meetings with politicians this week. So, final clip, let's hear from Tedros at the World Health Organization.
The other key in order to have better prepared and to address the disease X is the pandemic agreement. The pandemic agreement can bring all the experience, all the challenges that we have faced, and all the solutions into one. And that agreement can help us to prepare for the future in a better way, because this is about a common enemy. And without a shared response, starting from the preparedness, we will face the same problem as COVID. And deadline for the pandemic agreement is May 2024, and member states are negotiating. This is between countries, and I hope they will deliver this pandemic agreement by that time, on the deadline, because if this generation cannot do it, we're the lived community, we have the first-hand experience, I don't think incoming generation, the next generation will do it. So for our children and grandchildren's sake, I think we have to convert all the lessons we have learned into this pandemic and prepare the world for the future, because this is a common global interest. And national interest, very narrow national interest, should not come into the way. Of course, national interest is natural, but it's the narrow national interest that could be difficult and affecting the negotiations even as we speak.
So it's COVID all over again, basically. It's the same playbook. They're wargaming this thing called Disease X, which we've actually been talking about on the column for a couple of years now, but it's coming to increased prominence. It's been mentioned on the BBC a lot recently, and they're going to fight back against Disease X, which apparently doesn't exist yet, but they're already building vaccines for it. But ignore that. They're going to consolidate their global power and authority into this pandemic agreement, again, which we've talked about a lot on the show over the past few months. They're going to override national sovereignty in the name of these supposed global interests, i.e. their interests. And I think we should probably assume that this treaty is going to be ratified. We can draw attention to it, we can protest against it, but the grinding gears of the bureaucracy are going to do what they're going to do. And I think they're going to be itching to take their new powers out for a test ride as soon as they're available to them, basically. So summer 2024 is going to be a hot one. I think we should expect to see some action this year. Much more on the World Economic Forum coming up, and also probably next week as well. There's so much to get through, so many statements, and actually it's still running. It's on today. And in fact, Tony Blair is arriving in Davos today to run a session called Recreating Trust. And I cannot wait to hear what he has to say about that.
Indeed. Do you think, Ben, he's also there for his job interview for replacing Klaus?
I think he's already in the door, isn't he? He's probably doing on-the-job training right now. He's in the apprenticeship scheme.
Yes, indeed. Right. Well, look, before we look at what British government has been doing at Davos, let's just listen from another favourite person, I'm sure, of everybody that's watching this.
We make sure that for all these vaccines, that there's enough capacity, that there's competition so the prices keep going down. And we will have new vaccines. We'll have a TB vaccine, malaria vaccine, HIV vaccine, and even the things like COVID vaccines. We need to make them have longer duration, more coverage, and we're going to change, instead of using a needle, to use a little patch. So the pandemic really highlighted that we've been underinvested in those innovations, and our partners in India are part of how we're going to get these breakthrough products done.
So that's a bit more of what we've got to look forward to. Let's Jeremy Hunt decided to go. Let's look at him. There he is. What was he doing there? He was very worried about various things, especially AI and life sciences, because Britain is going to become the great centre for life sciences in the not too distant future. We're already a tech leader in Europe, apparently, with the UK's tech industry worth 3 times as much as Germany's and twice as much as France's. That's brilliant. But AI is a big driver of that. But since the government has already announced multi-million pound investments for the life sciences industry, including 520 million over 5 years for medicines manufacturing and 650 million for life science for growth package. And this was all, of course, mentioned in the autumn statement last November. He was very excited about that. But not the only government minister there. David Cameron there. Here he is meeting Mr. Kuleba from Ukraine. And you can see he's looking very stern. They're very determined, absolutely determined to make sure that we continue to support Ukraine to the death. Then, of course, he was meeting Antony Blinken. And Samantha Power as well. They were all there. You'll notice they're wearing their Davos badges. I just thought we would zoom in a little bit on that. And that's what the badge looks like this year. It's a pretty simple thing. Maybe a few people might want to create their own badges for next year or something, and go over and see what's going on from the inside. Okay, let's move on from Davos. If you like the UK column and what we do, you can support us by going to community.ukcolumn.org. There are options to help us out there. That would be very much appreciated. You could pick something up at the UK Column shop, but please do share anything you find on the various platforms, especially ukcolumn.org and ukcolumnextracts.co.uk. Debi, what's in your latest blog?
My latest blog is, sorry, I should have put titles up there, but pharmacists, pharmacies, jabs, medicines, Bill Gates, Disease X, all those lovely things that you really want to know about.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Debi.